Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are honored to have Justin Meyer, the Deputy Director of Aviation at MCI, with us today to give us a project update. And I was talking to him just a little bit before we got started, and I said how exciting it is to see everything that's going on. I just flew out for a quick vacation a couple of weeks ago, and it was so easy to get around and to see all the things that are happening out there. So, Justin, we're thrilled that you're here with us today to give us an update. Take it away.
Thank you for that introduction. It's great to be with you, Deb, and to everyone that's on this call, and to everyone that will be watching this at a later time as an archived presentation. It's a real great opportunity to be virtually out in the community, and in some cases out in the community in real life, providing updates on what is Kansas City's largest single infrastructure project in the city's history, and we've got good news to share. So in case you are not aware, we are constructing a new single terminal at Kansas City International Airport to replace the what was originally 3 horseshoe-shaped terminals, but is currently 2 horseshoe-shaped terminals that are in operation today. This construction site is where the 3rd horseshoe used to be, and we'll talk a little bit about that. It's a 39-gate facility and includes a new parking garage. And if you only have 2 things that you take away from this presentation, please let them be that the project is on time with a March of 2023 opening and is on budget, $1.5 billion project. So really excited about the good work of my colleagues at Aviation, the developer that we're working with, Edgemore Clark Waits Clarkson, as well as every single worker that is on the project site to keep this thing moving, whether it's through a snowy day in April or through what's already turning into kind of muggy days in May. The work continues, and that's really exciting. This is just a rendering from the departure level roadway looking towards the head house, as we call it, the main ticketing lobby or check-in lobby. Parking garage is right there on the left. And you again are on an elevated roadway here, so we'll talk through some of those changes as we get through this presentation. I mentioned that the 3 horseshoe of the original design when the airport opened for commercial air service in November of 1972, there was 3 terminals, and in fact a plan for a 4th terminal. Terminal A was here, if you can see my mouse moving. Terminal B, of course, where it stands today, Terminal C, and there was a plan for a terminal D is in Delta, to be constructed as demand warranted it. In presentations where I have a little bit more time, I usually dive into the unique history of the drive to gate design that we opened with in 1972, that TWA, Trans World Airlines, had a lot of decision in the design of that concept. We were actually designed to be the first from the ground up supersonic airport in the world, where in the mid 60s, everything was moving in that direction. In fact, the super hangars that are at the former Trans World Airlines overhaul base, which is of course now just a multi-use overhaul base for several different tenants. But those large super hangars that you can see from I-29 were actually designed for a Boeing supersonic transport aircraft that was never actually created. TWA never took delivery of them, and the aircraft was never even manufactured. So there was a lot of things in motion in the late 1960s that made parts of our facility out of date quite quickly. In fact, it was only 26 days after we opened the terminals on November 11th of 1972. It was December 7th of 1972 that the FAA approached airports and said, we've kind of got a problem with hijackings, and we're going to need you to begin screening passengers in their carry-on bags to make sure that people aren't carrying weapons on their person anymore, because that was not the case when we opened. So state of the art for 26 days. And then we've spent really the last 50 years trying to modify the facility and work with the facility and the constraints of a 1/3 of a mile long horseshoe that's only 72 feet deep. Creates a lot of issues for us in terms of the flexibility that we've needed over time as airlines have consolidated and aircraft have gotten larger, and all the changes that have taken place in the industry. But this isn't a full history lesson, so I'll just use this slide to point out that the air traffic control tower, which are common to see as you approach into the airport, from that, due to the west is where the 6,000 space parking garage will be, which will more than replace all of the parking garage capacity we had in terminals A, B, and C. We do know kind of pre-pandemic that big parking garage was a customer service failure, as we would frequently be out of available spaces in that garage Monday through Thursdays. So we'll more than replace all of our garage capacity, A garage, B garage, and C garage when the new terminal opens with that 6,000 space parking garage. The other thing that I'll just point out here, and I'll show on the next rendering that I have, is that this elevated roadway will help us achieve or lose a title that I'm not proud of that we have. We're currently the largest airport in the United States that doesn't separate arriving vehicular traffic from departing vehicular traffic from commercial vehicular traffic. And if you've driven, Deb, as you mentioned, being at the airport recently, if you've driven around those horseshoes, which are really 6 lanes with islands and multiple crossovers, there's certainly opportunities for that traffic to be a lot calmer and safer for pedestrians. And one of the things that we'll do by making a dedicated departure level and a dedicated arrivals level and moving some of the large rental car vehicles and Ride KC buses and hotel shuttles out of the primary lanes will really make it easier for drivers and for pedestrians, because everybody in the vehicular lanes will be doing essentially the same thing. And the amount of diving and crisscrossing that happens now will go away. In terms of the terminal design, 2-story head house in that area, ticketing lobby, check-in, security checkpoint on the upper level, baggage claim, baggage service office, several other amenities like the USO and the international arrivals area will be on the lower level of that building. Concourse A, the concourse closest to the head house, will have gates on the west side. And then the connector, 600-foot long connector, which creates enough space for aircraft to move in and out there without blocking each other. So there's a reason why it's that far away. But then the B concourse is dual loaded, which means that aircraft are parking both on the east side and the west side. And that's a really efficient use of square footage. Certainly not one that we've enjoyed in the horseshoe-shaped terminals that we've had, where aircraft can only utilize one side of the building. But if you've flown through some other airports like Indianapolis or Austin, Texas, or even some of the larger airports like Atlanta or Denver, you're very familiar with kind of the concourse walking down and gates and flights on both sides. And this, again, is really efficient use of space. And one of the things that we can benefit from that we can't benefit from today is if you're in a gate area that's really crowded, maybe you're flying a Frontier Airlines A321 with 230 seats on a Friday to Orlando, and that every seat's full and there's 5 lap kids. Well, you know, if as a Kansas City International Airport flyer, that we really don't have a single gate area that can handle that kind of volume. And so what we can do with this new layout in those cases where there's a large flight or a full flight, frequently you can sit across the hallway at a gate, but still have eyes on your departure gate, but be in a space that's much more open and less claustrophobic. So that'll be a nice benefit of the dual loaded concourse there on B side. Again, this is a rendering of the project. You can see this is kind of where my mouse is now, where the focal point was for that first slide, looking at the project. You can see how close the parking garage is. Through all of our community meetings, we heard quite often that convenience was really important and people were going to miss the convenience of the existing facility. And when we poked and prodded as to what convenient means, a lot of times that had a lot to do with walking distance. So we try to minimize walking distance as much as possible. And in fact, there will be several cases where the opportunity to park your car in the parking garage, walk across 4 lanes of traffic instead of 6 lanes of traffic, into the concourse, through the security checkpoint, into a gate on the A concourse, where your step count will actually be lower in the new terminal than what the average step count would be in the existing terminal today. So we have really worked to deliver on convenience. We have heard also that there's a lot of concern about how far this connector is, and I'm pleased to communicate that there's a moving walkways or travelators in both directions through that central connector. So if step count is really important to keep that low for a passenger, they will have the opportunity to take minimal count of steps through the connector between concourse A and concourse B. One other thing I want to point out here in this rendering, and we've had them in the rendering from the very beginning of the project, and in fact, we've kind of sealed and delivered on it now. They've not yet been installed, but we have gone to contract with a passenger boarding bridge operator, manufacturer, and we will be delivering, as you can see in this foreground, steel glass boarding bridges, which means passengers will be will eliminate that claustrophobia of the boarding process when you're kind of in a tube with 100 other people waiting to get on the aircraft. If you've flown through Europe or other countries, even Canada, you may have seen glass boarding bridges, and we're really excited to deliver that for our project here. There's a certain customer service enhancement that happens through that amenity, and we're really pleased that when we open in March of 2023, we will become the largest all glass bridge operating airport in the United States. So that'll be kind of cool too. Where are we on the design? We're done. The shape of the building is the shape of the building, and we're through the design of the air side and the land side and the parking garage. That is pretty much locked and loaded. Procurement is nearly 100% complete as well. There's a package for cleaning and some other minor pieces that are still left to procure, but that procurement status is what gives me such high confidence in our ability to deliver this project on budget, because the risk has really been transferred from the airport operator to the developer now, and any sort of cost overruns will be at their risk. We put a construction camera up on the air traffic control tower. So this is, if you were an air traffic controller looking due west where Terminal A used to be, and you can kind of see the status of the construction. There on the left side, you see the early parts of the B terminal, the bending concrete there that goes out that way. There's where some of the southwest gates are. But you can see the progress on the parking garage. It's about, I believe, about 45% done, I think is what I heard just in a meeting today. That's all precast and being assembled by J.E. Dunn as the garage constructor. So that's coming together really, really well. You can see behind the garage, the elevated roadway where it's connected to this up ramp, and the lower level roadway will come underneath. There'll be a commercial curb where we'll put those hotel buses, rental car buses, etc., in this area here. So that's that. Behind that, you see the white roof of the head house, the ticketing lobby. That's a 600-foot long building where airline check-in counters will go, where passengers will drop their bags, and then in the central point, access through a consolidated security checkpoint. And the great thing is, once you're through the security checkpoint in this new terminal, is everything is available to you. As compared to what we have at the existing Kansas City International Airport terminals, where a guest experience in terms of what amenities are available to them, be it nursing rooms or restrooms or concessions, sit-down dining, it all varies quite greatly on which airline you're flying, and honestly, which gate that airline has you departing from. And so if you're flying any other airline except for Southwest today, there's not an opportunity to get barbecue in the Kansas City airport. Southwest is the only airline that has that as an amenity. And so we really think that this will be a really great leveling field for the customer experience for all of our passengers, regardless of what airline they fly. If you're flying out of gate B35 over in this area, but your favorite coffee shop from Kansas City is located by A5, there's nothing that's going to prevent you from just walking over there and grabbing what you like and making your way through. So we'll talk a little bit about the concessions program at the end, but that's one of the certain benefits that the kind of the single terminal design will deliver for us. Just a few pictures of project status. This was a picture taken of some members of the construction team, development team at a quarry in southern Missouri, where we were inspecting the vein cut limestone, which will mark the back wall of the ticketing lobby. So it's neat to see not only is the workforce that's building this terminal Kansas City and from the region, but the material in cases like this is also locally sourced. So we're pretty excited about parts like that. We, in March of this year, turned on permanent power in the concourse. So yes, this picture is really only to show you that lights are turned on. And if you are flying through the existing facility or early morning or late at night, you may note now, Deb, perhaps you saw it on your flight, that there is power in the building and the building is lit up. So you can even see the terminal construction at night. In terms of renderings versus reality, this is a rendering on a phone placed in the area where it will be constructed. So this is that ticketing lobby, check-in lobby. You can see airline ticket counters will be on the left. Those kind of signature Y columns, which actually tie back to some of the brutalistic architecture design and shapes that we have in the existing terminals today. We'll be hanging the glass facing, which you can kind of see there on the left side of the rendering. The glass installation will be starting here in the next couple of weeks. So we're looking forward to getting the this big building starting to get closed up here really soon. Another picture of the same style. This is looking in the concourse connector. The rendering, you can see gates on either side and kind of the elevated ceiling going down the hallway to connect you to the central node or other gates. And you can kind of see where we are in the construction there. So moving really far along. And this is just done. This is a brand new picture we got last week. As we've completed some mock-up spaces in the terminal to make sure that we have the opportunity to review and kind of finalize or make any changes to additional things that we might not be 100% great with. So this is the if we flip back one, you can kind of see the roof paneling, ceiling paneling of the middle of the concourse connector, and that's what that is in this mock-up. Two things that I want to make sure everybody's aware of, because while we are pretty much 100% done with the design and the procurement, there are several parts of the project that are really wide open right now. And one of them is art. So as the largest single infrastructure project in the city of Kansas City, Missouri's history, as well as the city's commitment to moving 1% for any sort of large capital projects like ours towards public art, that means we also have one of the largest art projects going on in Kansas City's history, and have really been proud of the good work of the Municipal Arts Commission and the executive team that's been selected for this project to be engaged with the community and be engaged with national and global artists to bring world-class art into the project in Kansas City. So just to point out, maybe the most important bullet point on this is the last one, which is the website for further information about art in the new terminal, which is buildkci.com/art. I have a somewhat dated screen scrape here of what that page looks like, but there's lots of information about call for artists and community meetings that we've done. And it's my pleasure to share that the final call for artists is currently open. And this is for hanging art to be in the concourses and in the gate areas. So if you have someone in your life that you think deserves to be have their art exhibited permanently in the new terminal at Kansas City International Airport, or you yourself perhaps have an interest in that, the call for artists for that final piece is open now. We've made selections on, and then we've made public comments about the first 4 that have been selected. So you can get information on that at buildkci.com/art about who's been selected in the first 4. The next 4, we just had meetings last week to come to agreement on that for who those artists will be. So be on the lookout for some news on further art selections here in the near future. Where will art be? The art will be everywhere. And this map just really shows that in terms of where the layout will be. The concourses, which is what I mentioned, is available and open right now for local artists. We're talking about hanging art installations in both Concourse A and Concourse B. The other art that has been selected to this point is really exciting, and I had the opportunity to serve on the selection panel for the check-in, for the escalator for baggage claim, this green box here, and I'm really pleased with the artist that was chosen, Sue Sunny Park. It still needs to go in front of Kansas City City Council for full approval, but based on the quality of the submittal, as well as the comprehensiveness of the selection committee's review of the opportunities, really happy with that one. And quite honestly, personally, I'm really looking forward to riding that elevator in proximity to someone that's seeing that art piece for the first time, because it will it will be a comment opportunity for people to really take it in as they're arriving at Kansas City International Airport. The other thing that I mentioned I wanted to talk about was the concessions program and where we are with that. So the RFP for the concessions program is open right now. Responses are due next month. And I want to be a little bit careful as to what I can say. So I won't be able to answer any questions as to who do I want in the new terminal or what flavor barbecue will we have. That's all up in the air right now. And we're certainly looking forward to some good national and local participation. You can see here the program goals that we set for the program. We're really clear in what our priorities are. We want people to be taking advantage of technology that's available, that it's easier than ever to maybe procure things, even touchless, right, in this post-pandemic world that we will be traveling in. Really focused on making sure that costs are benchmarked against reasonable. And so there may be some things that we can do to keep costs fixed at first out, especially some of the high volume items like a bottle of water or other, to make sure that those are kept at a reasonable rate. But then really just the goal of local, we understand that it's going to be the concessions program that makes Kansas City International Airport feel like Kansas City to those of us that are locals, those of us that are coming to visit for the first time, and travelers that are maybe just transiting through Kansas City International Airport on their way to their final destination. So we do have a website for all the information about concessions. That's flykci.com/concessions. So buildkci.com/art and flykci.com/concessions, two websites that I encourage you to check out. Of course, the project has its own website, which is buildkci.com, and we are updating multiple times a week with status updates of the project, like the rendering or the mock-up that I just showed. That was just from this past couple of days. So if you are looking to add favorites or new home pages for your browser, we'd be honored to have you come and visit us there. We're also, of course, across most social channels, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Build KCI, all one word. And really certainly appreciate your attention there and your willingness to follow along and ask questions and engage with us on the project. If I could pivot just a little bit to kind of some of the trends that we're seeing in terms of air travel return, because we certainly need to recognize that building a new terminal when we've never had fewer passengers was a really awkward and odd position to be in. When the pandemic kind of hit and things got really bad, there were quite a few projects across the country and across the world, airport projects that got put on ice, where plans that had been made got put back in drawers and projects stopped. I'm thinking of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who had a very similar new terminal project that they were about to move forward with as one example of that. We were far enough along where we were just doing our first piece of steel out of the ground when the pandemic really hit. And we had a lot of engagement with our airline partners, and we're certainly pleased that our airline partners chose to continue to support the project through the pandemic with full support. And that's really allowed us to keep the project moving forward, not only to keep our timeline on track, but most certainly to keep our budget on track. For anyone that may be looking to build a house or do anything, it seems, in a kind of a post-COVID world, pricing is not your friend anymore. And I mentioned Pittsburgh, as the airlines are talking to Pittsburgh about, okay, now let's, we're seeing demand come back, let's talk about this project again. Well, other airport projects are having to go and reprice everything. And we know that construction material prices have gone through the roof. And so I had a conversation with a vice president of sales at one of our largest airline partners who said to me that just how impressed he was by the position that we're in Kansas City and the strength that we will be in coming out of this pandemic as an airport partner for this airline, in that we'll be delivering a brand new terminal, a post-COVID terminal at pre-COVID costs, because our prices were all locked in, and this individual was keen to make sure that we were aware of the benefit that he saw in terms of our position there. So that said, what are we seeing? Well, it was really dark days back in the spring for us at the airport, and I think all of us around the world, as the world was quite rapidly shutting down. We had only 403 passengers served on April 11th of 2020, and that an average for us this time of year is about 17,000 passengers a day. We're not back to 17,000 passengers a day, but we have returned our daily average throughput to over 12,000 passengers a day. And that's the first time we've been there since the pandemic. And you can kind of see on this track, this graph, which charts TSA throughput at Kansas City International Airport. There was initial recovery from the spring into the summer, but then really from summer through the beginning of this year, really just flatlined. There wasn't demand. But as vaccinations started to be distributed and cabin fever kind of took full on, we've really seen a new trajectory in terms of passenger volume through the Kansas City International Airport in the last year, this year to date, and then even in the last 4 weeks. So the end of April and the beginning of May has been a whole nother level, where even our lowest day last week was busier than our busiest day this past spring break. And that's pretty significant to consider. Outbound load factor, or percent of seats filled on an airplane from Kansas City International Airport so far this month, averages 85% across all of our airlines and all of our flights. If we were to only look at the last 6 days, we're north of 93%, 93, which means the middle seat's going to be full. And we're really pleased by what we're hearing from our airlines about what they're seeing in terms of demand recovery, especially for leisure, but especially Kansas City's role in that. This is a market that is turning back on quite quickly for our airline partners. So to speak a little bit about that, certainly there were a lot of cuts that happened to airline flight schedules through the pandemic. We've been really pleased to be working and engaged specifically with our airline partners to relaunch some of these higher priority routes. So American has turned back on Washington, D.C. Alaska just last week turned on Portland, Oregon. Delta Airlines has relaunched Los Angeles. They'll turn on Boston next month. Spirit has a slew of new routes that they'll be flying in June. And then just recently, Southwest had quite a few announcements for their June summer schedule, which takes a lot of capacity out of some business markets. So we still don't have service on Southwest to some of the markets that we've had them in, like Minneapolis or Milwaukee or Indianapolis, but they are pointing their aircraft in places where the demand for leisure travel is strong. Seeing them turn on markets like Panama City, Pensacola, Charleston, South Carolina. Brand new service to Sarasota. We've never had nonstop flights to Sarasota before, and Southwest will turn that on weekends only, starting in June next month. So as I mentioned on that previous slide, airline seats are increasing 13,000 now for the first time since March, and we'll actually clear 16,000 on average seat departures from Kansas City International Airport when we get to June. So June looks to be at about 25% below where we were in 2019 levels when we do benchmarking there. And you can see that visually depicted here. Future flight schedules, and I kind of hatched them out a little bit just because there is still flexibility and airlines are still changing their flight schedules. But you can see what the recovery potentially looks like there. And I certainly don't believe that September will fly within 5% of 2019. But the closing of this gap, light blue, which is 2019, to dark blue, which is 2021, the closing of that gap is really significant as airlines are returning capacity to Kansas City International Airport. So one last piece of really exciting news, and that is as we've emerged from the pandemic, we have been not only adding new airline destinations, but also a new airline itself. So a couple of weeks ago, JetBlue, based in New York, announced their intent to begin nonstop flights from Kansas City International Airport to both JFK in New York City and Boston Logan Airport. So flights are not yet published for sale, We expect that to be in about a year from now, May of 2022 to start. And really, this was fostered by a new Northeast Alliance that JetBlue and American Airlines have formed. We are absolutely looking forward to welcoming JetBlue to the existing terminal in 2022 before moving into the new terminal in 2023. Just one more thing to reference, Deb, I know you experienced, because we talked about it right before this started, but in case you haven't flown or been to the airport in a while, we have made some significant changes to the road pattern that brings you into Terminals B and Terminal C. So where in the past you would have approached on inbound Cookingham, right in front of you, you would have seen the air traffic control tower, and you would have orbited kind of in a counterclockwise fashion with the air traffic control tower on your left as you would have approached Terminal B first and then Terminal C. Now we have redirected the roadway, and we have bidirectional traffic, 2 lanes in each direction with a traffic barrier in between them, that you approach Terminal C, C as in Charlie first, and then via a roundabout can either access Terminal C or stay right in the right lanes and then access Terminal B, B as in Bravo. We remind you that the rules of a roundabout at an airport are the same as the rules of roundabout in your neighborhood or anywhere else in the world. And those rules are quite simple. One, before you enter a roundabout, you have to yield to all the traffic that's already in the roundabout. And rule number 2 is once you're in the roundabout, don't stop. If you miss your turn, just go around again and you'll get it the next time. So if everybody can follow those rules, it should be fine. Even as traffic is returning and we're seeing some really, really busy days, we've really had no major issues with the new traffic pattern. So we appreciate everybody slowing down and taking their time with making their way through the airport. For those of you that have not been at the airport recently, the view that you get from this roundabout and this drive over bridge of the new terminal construction project is really spectacular. So if you're like me, have a 15-year-old driver that maybe needs some practice a roundabout, come on up to the airport and get a view of the new terminal project as well. And I think that might be the last slide that I have, and I'm happy to leave the slides up to answer a few questions if there's anything we want to go back and reference, and that says the wrong group, so I'll go back to it. But if there's anything we want to talk about here or things we want to review, just let me know. And otherwise we can exit screen and go to see faces again.
Justin, I think Stoney has a question.
Yeah, Justin, I travel a lot, and actually I'll be at the airport tonight at 6:50 dropping a friend off. But one thing I was very impressed with, with the old layout, and I'm sure you guys will take care of it again, is when my family and I travel, there were 3 different instances where we went into tornado lockdown. So we were put in, I guess, the hallway between the garage and the terminal. Will you guys have the same procedure for that?
Yeah, we certainly will. There's for emergency response and sorts of severe weather and whatnot, we have defined locations and spaces inside the new terminal on lower levels and reinforced areas. So we will have that. There will not be a tunnel between the garage and the new terminal. There will be 2 walk across areas, one on the lower level, which will be completely enclosed. So if it's raining or snowing or nasty, you won't get wet, or the upper level, the departure level roadway, which will have 2 lanes of traffic closest. So if you're dropping someone off from a vehicle, they will be in the dry, which is different than what we have today for sure. Thank you for coming to visit, Stoney, and thank you for flying.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, but do we have any other questions from anyone else attending? Well, I'm going to go ahead and ask one. I'll applaud you first. This is phenomenal. I love the renderings and to see what's coming for all of us travelers. And as a recent traveler, I can't tell you how good it felt to get back out and go down to where I could get some rays down in Florida.
Nice.
So state of the art, incredible. And then speaking of the art project, it came to mind that there are a couple of our members that we need to reach out to make sure that they know some of these different sites that they could go out to. So thank you for sharing those. I know that when we first started talking about this project years ago, Southwest was talking about adding some additional flights. Did they do that?
So one of the things that we were really sensitive to in the communication plan for the new terminal, and of course the aviation department couldn't have been actively involved in that campaign, but one of the things that I personally made sure anyone who was campaigning on the new terminal knew full well that a new building does not equal more flights, and that those two things are completely unrelated. So that said, Southwest Airlines, our largest airline partner, has taken additional gate capacity in the new terminal than what they have today. And I think that that could be a very positive indicator about what their intent is to do in the new facility. The other thing that I want to point out, it was April 26th of 2016 when Southwest Airlines Vice President Steve Cisneros sat in front of Kansas City, Missouri City Council and said, quote, "We throttle back connections over Kansas City because it's such a negative experience for our guests," end quote. And if you were to kind of distill that, I think he's got a good point in that when I'm a connecting passenger through Chicago or St. Louis or Atlanta or Denver, I need three things when I get off an airplane. I need a bathroom, I need something to eat, and I need to walk around or find a place to plug in and sit down. Like those are my Justin's three primary needs as a connecting passenger. And when we think about what that experience is when you land at Kansas City International Airport, we have the benefit as local travelers of just walking out the door, getting in your car, getting on a bus and going home. But when you think of that, the confinement of that gate space where if you're on a delayed flight that you might experience, or how limited the restroom availability is in the existing facility, or how limited the food choices or concession opportunities are, there is a real promise that we will eliminate in the new terminal. We will eliminate the negatives that make us a bad place to be a connecting passenger. Now, I don't believe that we're going to become a mega hub like Atlanta or Denver or Chicago O'Hare, but it would take very little for an airline to start optimizing schedules in a way where maybe 3 or 4 flights from kind of west of Kansas City could land a route at the same time, and 3 or 4 flights could then depart east of Kansas City, and there could be a little bit of transferring of passengers there. And in that action of delivering connecting volume to Kansas City International Airport would allow us to potentially recruit and support us as a region flights to markets that we can't support on local demand alone. So I'll mention Kansas City, Pittsburgh as a market that was one of our top unserved destinations. And, you know, this list also includes Cleveland and Louisville and other airports like that, Columbus, Ohio. But in the Pittsburgh example, we have just less than 100 passengers per day pre-COVID that we're flying. There's not an airline hubbed in Pittsburgh. So there's not somebody I could go talk to, like I talked to Delta at Atlanta if I needed an additional frequency to Atlanta, or when I was talking to United about San Francisco when that nonstop turned on. But without a hub airport, you've got to be able to win it on the local passengers, and we just don't have. With 100 passengers a day and their smallest aircraft being 143 seats, like the math just doesn't work. It's too much risk. But if we can, in that kind of connecting bank structure I mentioned, if we had 4 flights coming in one from Phoenix, one from Denver, one from Oakland, one from Seattle, and each of those had 3 to 5 people on them that wanted to go final destination Pittsburgh, we could all of a sudden start making some of those things work. So that's a really long answer to your very simple question of, will we get more flights? I believe we will get more flights. I don't necessarily believe it'll all be due to the terminal, but as we work to eliminate some of the issues that we have in the existing facilities, I do believe we'll see our airlines grow, whether that's through additional frequencies, new destinations, or what I think will be extremely likely, larger aircraft, where right now, for example, Delta Gate, 67, 68, which are right next to each other, if they have 2 A321s on the ground, which have 200 plus seats on them each, that's 400 people getting on an airplane and 400 people getting off an airplane, and you've been in that hold room, and that's 800 people, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so I think the new facility will really allow us to better accommodate the desiring upgauging that our airline partners are doing across their networks.
Well, and it sounds like there's a lot of growth potential. So that's the other thing that I applaud you for your foresight to make sure that that exists. And thank you for bringing JetBlue in. I think that's another great addition. I remember talking at the very beginning of this project again about how important the airport is to our economic development in all of our surrounding cities, not just Kansas City, Missouri. With us being in Johnson County, we're big supporters of the airport and so appreciate this project and everything that you've put into it. I'll go for last questions. If anybody else has any comment or question that you'd like to ask of Justin.
Deb, I saw a question from Kent Noland
Okay.
about baggage claims. So if I could just address that
Perfect.
real quick. The head house, that area right next to the elevated roadway is 2 levels. So I mentioned the top level, airline ticket counters where you'll check your bag, and then the consolidated security checkpoint, which will be significantly more efficient than what we have now. And I know that there's some concern about longer lines. And yes, I can see that lines will most likely be longer when you consolidate the security checkpoint into one location. But when you have 10 to 18 lanes of security, the line might be long, but it actually moves really quick. And so I think we'll see a lot more efficiency there. But the question wasn't about security. The question was about bag claim. And we'll have on the lower level, as you are an arriving passenger, escalators and elevators and stairs that can take you to the lower level of that below the ticketing lobby. We'll have, I believe on opening day 7, it might be 8 baggage claim systems where the bags will be delivered to you there. So plenty of space to spread out. One of the complaints that we hear frequently now is how long it takes for the bags to get delivered to the bag belt in the existing facility. And that really is kind of an interesting conversation because it actually takes the same amount of time to take your bag off of the airplane. Deb, where was it that you flew in Florida? Where did you go?
Panama City.
Okay, so Panama City has the same number of people touching an airplane when it lands and unloading the bags and putting them on the baggage cart and driving them to the bag claim device, the up belt, to send it to where the passengers are waiting. But people feel like in Kansas City it takes longer. It's the same amount of time. The thing that happens in Kansas City and is in some cases, if you're at Southwest Airlines Gate 45 or United Gate 68 or 69, you're right there. Like you get off the airplane and you're literally standing there. And so I've been the guy a couple times when I've been standing next to the United bag claim, for example, if we were on a flight that just parked on gate 69, and people are like, why is it taking so long? I was like, here, like you can stand here and like you can actually see the person, they're still taking off. The thing that happened is the 5 to 10 minutes of walking that you usually do at Panama City or any other airport is not in the existing facility. So I believe people will feel like they're getting their bags to them quicker just because of the way that we're going to a more normal kind of distance between where the gates are and where the baggage will be picked up.
Kent, thank you for that question. That was great. Justin, do you have any final words that you want to share with us? You did a great job in the presentation and very informative. Thank you.
Sure. And one other thing that I'll end on, if we've got a little bit of time, is just the commitment to accessibility and inclusiveness that we've gone into this project with. And it's not very common that a community in the United States gets to start over and build a completely new facility. There's a lot of renovation projects and things like that where you're trying to work around the problems that you've got. But we had the opportunity to really start with a blank sheet of paper, and that's been one that we've really committed to delivering a accessible facility and an inclusive facility. And I mentioned the rooms for nursing that we currently only have 2 across both of our terminals now. We'll take that number to about 10, I think. So a significant increase there. We're going to deliver so many things that as Kansas City travelers, we've just never had the opportunity to experience in our home airport. We've been working really closely with Variety KC to deliver on a accessible play area. So children of all abilities will have the opportunity in the B node area, which is where most flights will be departing from the B concourse, to burn off a little steam and play and have that experience. We'll really knock it out of the park on our family restrooms with full-size adult changing tables. We're delivering on a few things like meditation room for someone that might need a little bit of a quieter airport experience. We've partnered with several members of the community that get us really smart on how we could deliver a sensory room with a bullseye of that audience being perhaps travelers or families with children on the autism spectrum, that they could have a different experience. We're also working to deliver a USO for our military service travelers. We've never had that before. One of the things that I was really engaged on is we'll deliver in a couple locations multi-user all-gender restrooms. And there's not another airport in the U.S. that's really figured that out yet. And so we've been really committed to not just trying to come up with what's the best thing we can do now, but what's the best thing we can do in the future, because we don't get this chance all but once every 50 to 75 years. And we want to make sure that we're not necessarily only solving problems in 2020, 2021 and 2023 when we open, but we're solving problems in the 2030s and 2040s and creating a facility that's going to work well for all of our travelers as expectations of the traveling public continue to change as we go forward.
I agree with what Sherry Stroud just said. Thank you so much. This was a great presentation, very informative. And we have your name, so if anything comes up, we know who to reach out to get some answers. So congratulations on a fantastic project. Can't wait to see the finish.
Well, I can't end without saying thank you to the support of so many chambers throughout the region, but especially yours and the engagement that you had to help us get this project kind of to the starting line. There was a lot of concerns in the community, some which were legitimate and some that weren't. You know, it's always interesting. You know, you're a Kansas-based chamber. It wasn't but 4 years ago, I think, where there was the governor of the state of Kansas was saying, we're just going to build it in the state of Kansas. And so it's really gratifying not only to be where we are, but to have gotten there with the support of organizations like yours. So thank you.
I think that goes back to you too, though, for reaching out, because as I said earlier, Johnson County is great supporters of the airport by all of the travel in and out of that. So we were appreciative of the opportunity to be a part of the initial discussion. So thank you, Justin. Hope you all have a great day that joined us today, and 2023, I can't wait.
Thank you.
All right, Justin, thank you.
Bye.